And good evening. My name is Ryan Belmore, and I'm the owner and publisher of What's Up Noop. And coming to you this evening, big news in the last 24 hours, just about 24 hours ago in Australia, the Australian National Maritime Museum announced that the shipwreck of James Cook, famous vessel, His Majesty's bark Endeavour, has been found. And it was found in Newport Harbor. And of course, over the years, we've been tracking this since I've been covering this since 2016, but this search has been going on since 1999, and I'm sure for much longer than that. Joining us this evening to talk about the discovery is from the Australian National Maritime Museum. He is the Curator of Naval Heritage and Archaeology at the Australian National Maritime Museum. He's Dr. James Hunter, and that is quite the business card.
Thanks.
Yes.
So I heard my last one I had before. It was ridiculous, even longer.
So, I've been covering this since 2016. I was over in Australia at the museum and talked with the museum then. They had a good inkling that it was there. The museum came and made an announcement at Gurney's in September 2019. And we're pretty sure. What got us to the point in the last 24 hours that we could say that it's there?
Oh, I think it had a lot to do with some of the hull structure that we've looked at, starting in 2019 and continuing through 2020 and into the first part of this year. In a nutshell, we've got some structural elements of that wreck site that match pretty much identically to what we're seeing on plans of H&B Endeavour that were created by the Admiralty in 1768.
You've been down there. There hasn't been a lot of people that have been down there. How convinced are you that it's the Endeavour?
I'm about as convinced as I can be. I've been in this business for 25 years, worked on a lot of wooden shipwreck sites, and if I'm being completely honest with you, Ryan, I've never had an instance where I have seen structural elements of a shipwreck, looked at historic plans of a vessel, and went, that aligns. I mean, very rare to see that in what I do. I would be incredibly surprised if it turned out to be something else.
We just got to talk about, what is it like to go down there and just discover the Endeavour?
Oh, well, I mean, it's never a situation where you go down there and go, oh, you know what it is when you get there. If only, wow, that would be nice. In my career, I very rarely found a diagnostic artifact or something on a shipwreck with a name on it. I've only found one bell in 25 years and it didn't have a name on it or a date. So it was just a lump of brass, really. But, it's a process of collecting data, analyzing that data as thoroughly as possible, comparing it to any historical records that you have, comparing it to other archaeological sites that may have similar attributes, and building a composite. And bearing in mind that with this shipwreck, and indeed many shipwrecks I've worked on over the years, we don't excavate the entire hull. We only excavate little bits of it at a time. So you're getting tiny little disparate bits of information. And so you've got to look at them very closely to really build that picture and create enough evidence that you can confidently say, yeah, pretty sure this is what we've got. Now, in terms of diving on the wreck site, though, it's dark, frequently cold. We normally come over there in September, and we wear dry suits. It's a chilly place to work. And Newport Harbor, as you well know, is pretty dark. We're down there in roughly 35 feet of water, I guess, something like that. And some days we can't see our hands in front of our faces, and other days we get lucky and we might get 6, 8, 9 feet of visibility, and it's amazing. It's like somebody turned the lights on.
And just for those who haven't been following along as closely, you reckon that was a really bad pun, but about 15% of the ship might be left?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's hard to say definitively without uncovering the entire remaining structure, but based on what we're seeing, it's just the bottom of the hull, so it's just that last little bit. We've got the keel, we've got the floors and framing, or the ribs, as people call them, that form the skeleton of the vessel. We've got hull planking, which is the exterior planking. We've got ceiling planking, which is the internal planking. We've got remnants of the pump well and one of the bilge pump shafts. And we've got a ghost of where the keel sit, which is another centerline timber that locked the frame in place. We've got that. But yeah, I wouldn't say more than about 15%. It's not much.
Will we get to a place where we're 100% convinced? What would that take?
Oh, I mean, I guess what that would take would probably be something with a name on it. I mean, it'd be magic if we found a hull plank that had James Cook was here, scratched in it, but probably not going to find that. The thing you have to remember about this shipwreck and about the Lord Sandwich, as it was called when it was scuttled, is that, that vessel was stripped of everything of value because they sank it on purpose. It was sunk as a block ship. So anything that they could have reused or had any value, like a bell or anything that had a name on it, off the ship. Prior to that, it was being used as a prison hulk for a brief period in 1777, 1778. And my experience in reading about prison hulks from that period is that the people who were kept incarcerated on the vessel because of disease were very strict about keeping it as clean as they possibly could. And so what you found on prison hulks during that period was that daily they would sweep the ship and get rid of all the garbage and everything to try to keep it clean, prevent the spread of disease. So when you factor that in as well, you're talking about a lot of artifacts getting swept over the side and not in association with the vessel. So chances of finding a diagnostic artifact with a name on it, probably pretty low. Now, we could do more excavation work, and there are other structural elements we could look for. I think sometimes people forget with shipwrecks, the biggest artifact is the hull. It's the thing that holds all the little goods. And in the case of a vessel like Endeavour, that's the original artifact. That's the one piece of the puzzle that probably didn't change much from the time the vessel was built in 1764 until it was scuttled in 1778. So that's the thing you got to be looking at. That's the thing that's got all that original information there. And it also has a historical record. It's got plans, it's got a survey, it's all these descriptions of how the thing was built and designed and everything else. So that gives you some information to compare your archaeological data with. So, there are other things we could look for. I'd love to find something with a name on it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
You've been down there. You're the archaeologist. Looking at and I'll put it up on the website so people can go and find out a whole lot more about this at c.museum. The announcement has been called Premature. One of the partners in the search over the years has said there's been no indisputable data found. What's your reaction to the dispute that it's too soon to say this, even though the search has been going on for 22 years?
I would say that, again, we're using what's called a preponderance of evidence approach. And as I mentioned earlier, the chances of finding something with a name on it, or a diagnostic artifact that's got a name attached to it, I'm not ruling it out. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but the chances of that happening, given the processes that were occurring aboard that vessel before it was scuttled, makes it infinitesimally small. So what you've got to do is you've got to work with what you've got, and I think we've been very thorough with this. We created a list of criteria that we agreed to with our partners that, if we found this and this and this and this, we did all those things, then we can feel fairly confident, about as confident as we're ever going to feel in assigning an identity to this shipwreck. And I think we've done that. I'm actually quite confident of
And I'll include the website on the bottom again. People can go there and learn more about it. You aren't all just part-time divers who have discovered this. If you look at any of your bios who have been a part of this project, you're professionals. I've been announcing. It feels like every 2 years since 2016. It's been found. Another update coming. Today I'm a little disappointed because it's such big news that I feel like I'm so vested in, but I feel like people are numb. I texted one senator from Rhode Island, and they said it's been found again. Have we made everybody numb of the news? I mean, this is the big news that we've all been waiting for, right?
Yeah, it is big news. I mean, I think this is ultimately the moment, if you will. But yeah, it's it's a tricky thing with projects like this. Especially when you're talking about a wreck as internationally significant as this one. And part of that is a result of being cautious. And I mean, archaeologists are cautious by their very nature. I certainly, I feel that we at the museum have been cautious. I mean, we wouldn't go out yelling this from, all corners if we didn't believe it. And certainly, last year before, back when I started the project in 2017, we didn't have enough evidence to say that. I didn't believe we did. My colleagues in the museum didn't, and our colleagues in America didn't think that either. But yeah, I think we're there now, and yeah, it's a tough one because I think there's a lot of this is it, and there's a bit of a build up, and then it doesn't turn out because again we're cautious. We tend to be cautious by nature, archaeologists, and we don't like jumping the gun because once it's out there, it's very hard to rein it back in, if you end up being wrong. So, and we know that. So, yeah, I mean, that's been a bit tricky. But I think, I don't know, from my perspective now, it's not so much, the discovery has its place and it's important. But I think it's where we go from here that's more important.
That's where I was going to leave this is, there's not going to be a big moment where the boat comes out of the water and, that's not happening. So where are we going from here?
Well, I think probably the most important thing we need to be looking at right now as a next step is getting that site protected. I mean, it is protected to a certain degree because of where it is. It's close to shore. It can be monitored. But as you well know, that area is an active anchorage. You've got folks fishing, you've got lobstermen, you've got all that. And I think in the interests of preserving that 15% that's left, and it's very fragile stuff. I mean, it doesn't take much to really mess those whole components up and the artifacts that the wreck contains. There's a whole sort of process, I think, where we need to look at trying to stabilize the site, get protection, both theoretically, in terms of legislation and a protected zone, but also physically, bolstering it. If there are areas where it appears to be scouring out and uncovering, getting sandbags or some other sort of mitigation effort put in place so that we can preserve it because it's important and it deserves that. And it belongs to the people of Rhode Island. And that's your cultural heritage. That's your legacy, and I would like to see it there for the very long term.
And it's pretty darn important to the people of Australia and New Zealand as well as that part of the world as well.
It is absolutely. I mean, Endeavour has, particularly in Australia, it's significant, it's important, but it's also contentious, understandably, particularly for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's that's the beginning of a major change in their culture. That has had ramifications up to the present day. So, yeah, it is important, and like anything, I think it deserves to be studied and discussed and debated. And I'd definitely like to see that discussion carry on.
Excellent. So we'll see you diving back in Newport soon.
Well, hopefully.
Well,
COVID,
that's right.
COVID willing and everything else. Yeah, hopefully. We'll be back over there.
Yeah. So I'm going to encourage everybody. C.Museum. Just a beautiful section of the website, shows video of the divers, possibly you on there. A lot of great things, and that's probably going to be the closest that you're going to get to it for a while here. So C.Museum.
Yeah. I wish I were in there. I'm the guy behind the camera.
Okay. All right. Everybody has a role, but I appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure it's been a wild 24 hours.
It has, and I'm on holiday at the moment. Actually, I'm visiting my family in the U.S., so there's been a lot of phone calls while we've been driving to go see my grandfather and everything. It's been, yes, on the go.
Well, I appreciate you joining me on a holiday. So, yeah. All right. Well, Dr. James Hunter, thanks, and we will talk to you when you're back in Newport.
Great. Thanks so much, Ryan. It's been great seeing you.
Great to see you as well. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good.
All right. And he is Dr. James Hunter. And again, C.Museum, you could dive into the Finding Endeavour story, the Australian National Maritime Museum's new Center for Maritime Archaeology. If you want to read more about the discovery, we have a couple stories up on whatsupnoop.com today. If you missed any portion of this video, you can catch it live on whatsupnoop.com. Thanks for watching.